Mr. Alawi?
Yes, I can hear you.
With your permission, we would like to wait for 5 minutes. Mr. Alawi?
Yes.
Yeah, with your permission, we would like to wait for 5 minutes, if you allow, because it's 5
Yes,
o'clock,
please.
5 IST now. So we have around 35 people. So shall we start or we wait for 5 minutes? Whatever way you feel convenient.
I think we can start and then anyone can join us.
Okay, okay. Alvin, I'm starting now.
Yes, Mr. Madhu.
So, okay, so with the permission of Mr. Alawi, I welcome everyone. I am Madhusudan here, CEO of San Madhur. San Madhur is a company into corporate event management, human resource solutions, and consulting support. Thank you so much, Alvin Integrated Service, giving me this opportunity to moderate this session today. This is the seventh ISO knowledge sharing session being organized by Alvin Integrated Service. The purpose of this series is ISO knowledge sharing series is to let people know the industry standards available for adoption so that we can have more and more surety, stability, compliance, and brand credibility in whichever domain we are operating in. So, as we have been delivering the last 6 months, we had really good speakers being blessed today, having Mr. Hassan Alawi with us today. So, just a brief 2, 3, 4 lines I will say about Mr. Hassan Alawi. Not much because then he's there to take care of that. Today we have Mr. Hassan Alawi. He is the Senior Director at Oman Infrastructure Investment Fund based out of Oman. And he possesses with himself more than 27 years of corporate experience, exposure into the domains of risk management, business continuity, project management, project finance, corporate governance, crisis management. What more to say? So I should be brief. And he has handled various aspects right from planning to execution level, be it oil and gas or be it venture capital or the project finance. He has been handling, and now he's at such a situation where we can learn a lot from his experience and expertise. Today's topic is basically we are going to talk about risk management. As the topic says, ISO 31000 risk management. How is it performed in such a transitional period? You all know we have been passing through a very, very bad phase. This COVID-19 has really put us in a very, very challenging situation, personally as well as professionally. And the key points that are going to be highlighted or pondered upon or shared upon by Mr. Alawi is ISO standards in the pandemic era, special example to risk management, role of ISO 31000, impacts and guidelines, responding to mitigation and impact of COVID-19, and finally, as it should end, lessons learned to keep in track with risk management. So basically, he's going to focus on overall scenario from the perspective of ISO 31000, but covering how it is going to affect the different domains of an organization all over. With these words, while I welcome you all, whosoever has joined, all participants, thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Mr. Hassan Alawi, for agreeing to share your knowledge with all of us. With these words, I hand over to Mr. Alawi. Over to you, Mr. Alawi.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this introduction. And good evening, afternoon, morning to all of you joining us on this webinar at different time zones. As mentioned in the introduction, I'll be talking about risk management system, specifically ISO 31000. It is a challenging, as many good speakers and webinars have addressed this. So I'll try to cover it from different perspectives where possible. We have around 1 hour. It might be best to note down your questions and share them probably at the end of each agenda item, as you may find answers to some of them while I'm covering the agenda items. We'll cover over the allocated time frame the four agenda items, the ISO standards in pandemic area, and then the rule of ISO 31000, which will be the main part of our discussion, though it can't be covered fully in like half an hour, but we'll aim to walk through its principles, framework, and the process to have a knowledge about it. And then we'll talk about how to respond and mitigate such pandemic like COVID-19 and probably other catastrophes. And then finally, what lessons we learned or we could possibly learn to ensure effective risk management system in place. So those are the agenda items. We hope to cover them within the time allocated, which is around 45 minutes. Now, starting with the first agenda item. Now, of course, there's a relationship between catastrophes and risk management. One concern with identifying, assessing, and mitigating anything that could cause risk harm to business or a human, whereas the other one concerned with responding to unforeseen events. So pandemics are one of the unforeseen. Black swan, as others like to describe them, they are then in a close relation with risk management, and that's why I'm trying to show this relationship through the graph. Now, if we take, for example, if you move to the next slide, yeah, and by the way, this slide shows COVID-19 with around 500,000 infected. That was back in June, but now, of course, it's around 1+ million in terms of the death. So this graph shows the relative and the comparison between the COVID-19 and the rest of the pandemic over the history. So it's not the biggest. We hope it will not be the biggest. We hope it will soon end. So if we take, for example, Spanish flu as an example, which had infected 500 million people around the world, which is about 27% at that time. And the death toll was estimated to have a huge number at that time. If we compare it then with current era, then it will be a huge, and we're talking about 17 to 50 or 100 million. Are we in for the same kind of catastrophe? Today, this would mean, as we said, 2 billion infections, toll of 50 to 200 million deaths. So in comparison with 100 years ago, we have better and faster communication channels, and one of them thanks to the risk management. We have more timely information and evolved understanding of viruses. So true to claim we have more knowledge and options on how to manage this kind of threat. Still though, the world wasn't really ready for this event, and early signs haven't been picked up, and we've seen over the past months how criticism was focused on the World Health Organization. So although it's a horrible experience now, but this pandemic is a good opportunity to explain what risk is, how it is defined in ISO 31000 standard for risk management, and why this definition offers better insights to deal with these kind of complex occurrences. So we all agree then pandemic is primarily a health crisis, but it's also has far-reaching economic consequences. Worldwide, it's disrupting millions of people's livelihood. As a global crisis, it's posing challenges to humanity that have never been experienced before, at least for the past 200 years with this communication and channel. Almost all communal activity globally has ground to a halt. No country has been left untouched by the outbreak. So standardization, this is where I'm trying to come to distill it from the pandemic into the risk management and the rest of the standards. So standardization distills and makes available international expertise and knowledge regarding usability, quality, safety, performance, or any other characteristics required by users, buyers, or producers. So standards contain technical specification, procedures, and guidance on how to conduct activities for this descriptions of best practices applied by experienced professionals in a given field and for other specific information. And of course, today more than ever, the use of standards is very important to ensure that products and services meet the requirements. And of course, it can help mitigating the negative effects of the global pandemic in multiple ways. And we will see how this has materialized in our case. So what trying to say that the pandemic doesn't happen very often. And one would expect that in such unpredictable circumstances, the rules have to be invented on the go. But ISO 22301, 27001, 9001 are ready-made frameworks that can be applied effectively even in the adverse situation. Yes, you might tailor made them a bit to suit your organization, but at the end, you need to use it or to use them as a standard. So access to standards, standard operating procedure, SOP, good manufacturing practice, GMP, all of these are sometimes restricted by the need to costly purchase them. In case of pandemic, access to such standards and practices very crucial to be immediate to ensure widest and fastest adoption of such practices. So many standards organizations like ISO have made the relevant standards available free of charge to support the fight against COVID-19. So ISOs have responded, and this is the summary of this part, that ISO really have responded positively to COVID-19 by making all its standards available and accessible, which is very, very appreciable. Now, many good examples can be quoted at different relevant fields to pandemic, be it in medical sector, health, safety, risk, business continuity, and emergency management. On the next slide, now ISO standards prove to be important and needed, as we said, at crisis and can help in identifying risk and continuing businesses post the pandemic. I have quoted here an example of the usability of ISO standards. By using three good ISOs, ISO 31000, risk management, ISO 22301, business continuity, and ISO 65000, which concludes the resilience of the organization. The further dissemination and application of such standards will be particularly important in the short term, but of course remain a priority in the medium and long term. COVID-19 has taught us a lot about being resilient over actually a long term. Now moving, this was like, an introduction of the relationship between the pandemic and any other catastrophe and of course risk management. Now moving to the second agenda item, the rule of ISO 31000, the principles and guidelines. Now a bit background about this subject. Just a reminder, ISO is International Organization for Standardization, which is a worldwide federation of national standards bodies, and IEC, International Electrotechnical Commission. Now, ISO collaborates closely with IEC, as you might have noticed in many of their publications. So they closely collaborates with IEC on all matters of technical specification. Now, the subject here is ISO 31000, prepared by technical committee back in 2009. Now, ISO 31000 second edition cancels and replaces the first edition. So the new version, which is called ISO 31000 2018, provides more strategic guidance than the first edition. I will just mention here the main two changes between the first and the second edition. The new edition places more emphasis on both the involvement of senior management and the integration of risk management into the organization, which means it's part of the organization and its structure. The other important feature is it places greater emphasis on the iterative nature of risk management. So it's not just a standard, it's not just a procedure, it's iterative mechanism, which means the process is more dynamic. Now, ISO 31000 main objective remains the same: to manage risk and making decision, setting and achieving objectives, and improving performance. Now, the magic word appears here is managing risk. What does it mean? And basically, in a very plain vanilla, iterative and assets organization in setting strategy, achieving objectives, and making informed decisions. It's part of the governance and leadership and fundamental to how the organization is managed at all levels and part of all activities. And we will see how that translated in the physical implementation of the ISO 31000 as we describe its principles and process. Now, ISO, if we move to the next slide. Now, ISO 31000, like any other standard, based on principles, framework, and process. So outlined in this chart, which is again quoted from ISO standard itself. Now, these components might already exist in full or in part with the organization. However, they might need to be adapted or improved so that managing risk is efficient, effective, and consistent. What is interesting about ISO 31000 that the guidelines can be customized to any organization and its context. So it's not a rigid per se. Now, this actually chart or graph represent the three main components, as we said: principles, which is quoted in clause 4 of the ISO standard; framework, clause 5; and process, clause 6. So I'll try to touch upon each of the component with a bit of background and explanation. So principles are the first component of the standard, which is on the top of the three circles. You will notice in each big circle of those three, a text which reflects actually the purpose of each component. Meaning, in case of principles, you will see that the purpose is the value creation and protection. So the principles are the foundation for managing risk and should be considered when establishing the organization risk management framework and process. These principles should enable the organization to manage the effects of uncertainty on its objectives. So the principles here, and you can see them integrated. What does that mean? Actually the risk management is integral part of organizational activities. The next one is structured and comprehensive, which is the approach itself of the risk management. which contributes to consistent and comparable result. And then customized, and I did touch on that, saying that one of the advantages of ISO 31000 is that it can be customized to suit your organization. Then the next one is inclusive. And inclusive meaning from the word itself that include all the stakeholders. So the involvement of the stakeholders, very important. So it enables their knowledge, views, and perceptions to be considered. The next one is dynamic. And again, risk can emerge, change, or disappear as an organization external and internal context change. So risk management anticipates, detects, acknowledge, and respond to those changes. Meaning that if you create your, for example, risk register, then that wouldn't be like a rigid one. It's a dynamic. You will update it, you will review, you will amend and edit whatever needed, be it external or internal risk. The next one is best available information. Now, what we meant by that, or what ISO 31000 refers to, is that actually it's based on historical and current information, as well as future expectation. So risk management explicitly takes into account any limitations and uncertainties associated with such information and expectations. So information should be timely, clear, and available to relevant stakeholders so that will help to make decisions. The next one is the human and cultural factors. Human behavior and cultural significantly influence all aspects of risk management. Again, I should mention one of the good features about this ISO, which actually I favor it over the Cosmo, is that the consideration for the human factor and the human culture. Now, the last item of the main principles, or the principles, are continual improvement. And it is actually a continual process through learning and experience. And then when we said it's iterative, that you can always go back and revert to those principles and try to learn and reflect whatever you learned through the process itself, that we will talk about it in a bit. So these are the main principles of the ISO 31000. Now, the next one is the framework. Again, likewise with the principles, the purpose of risk management framework is to assist the organization in integrating risk management into activities and functions. Now, we define what are the frameworks of the ISO 31000, and now how actually you integrate the risk management into your activities and consider it as part of your organization structure. It helps, again, in integrating, as we said, into all activities. The effectiveness then of the risk management will depend on its integration into the governance of the organization. Of course, when we say that you need to integrate risk management into your organization, meaning to be part of your governance, because the governance will actually move the organization and allow the board of organization to accept this concept to be integrated into the organization itself. Now, of course, this wouldn't happen without the support from stakeholders. And on the top of the stakeholders is the top management. Now, framework development encompasses integration. And as can be seen on the left side of the bottom circle, you will see that the first word is integration. And basically, this relies on understanding of the organization structure and context. Structures differ depending on organization purpose, mission, vision, goals, complexity, all of that. The second one is design. And the design covers few items. I'll just mention the main ones: understanding of the organization, articulating risk management commitment from the management, assigning organizational rules, authorities, responsibilities, accountabilities, and then allocating resources, and establishing communication and consultation. This is when we say the design. Now, the next one is implementation. Again, once you integrate, once you design the risk management, then you need to implement and reflect the risk management framework. How? By developing an appropriate plan, including time and resources. Time and resources meaning that who should I allocate to take care of the risk management system in my organization, in terms of the resources, in terms of the time required over the course of the year, or the plan for 5 to 7 years whatsoever. Then identifying where, when, and how different types of decisions are made across the organization and by whom. The accountability, which is again part of the previous one, when we say that you need to assign accountability as well. Then modifying the applicable decision-making process where necessary, and ensuring organization arrangements for managing risk are clearly understood and practiced. And again, I reiterate on that point, emphasize it, that the successful implementation of the framework requires the engagement and awareness of stakeholders. On the top of the stakeholders, the top management. They should buy in, they should believe into the implementation of the risk management in the organization. Now, the final part of the framework is evaluation. So to evaluate the effectiveness of risk management, the organization needs to periodically measure risk management framework performance, how the risk management has assisted the organization in achieving, identifying, assessing, and evaluating the risk. And even not from qualitative point of view, from also quantitative, because that will be translated in dollars. And then determine whether it remains suitable to support achieving the objective of organization. If not, then you have to tailor-made it, but still using the framework and the design from the ISO 31000. And of course, you can always do improvement by adapting, by continually improving it. Again, the good part of components of the framework and the way in which they work together can be customized, as we said, to the needs of your organization. So this is the second part, which is the framework. Now, the last part, which is the process itself. Now, if you can imagine those three components, the principles, framework, and process, as if you've setting up your mission, vision, and now how you actually translate that vision and mission, which are the principle and framework, into the process, how you actually practice and do the risk management. This is what's meant by the process, which is on the right side of the chart. Now, the process, again, I did mention that at the beginning. And again, sometimes I repeat things because to distinguish between what we had previously on ISO 31,000 2008, or even in other similar standards to ISO 31000, that the risk management process in here is actually it is iterative, and you've seen many procedures as if showing the risk management as sequential, but in fact the 31,000 emphasize the point of being iterative process, so you can always go around it and try and implement whatever suit your organization and then customize it. So the process has three pillars. If you look left, right, and at the bottom, the communication and consultation. And then we have the monitoring and review, and then recording and reporting. I'll touch upon each one with a few words. On the communication and consultation, of course, this assists relevant stakeholders in understanding risk, the basis on which decisions are made, and the reason why particular actions are required. Communication is so important, very crucial. Many organizations, unfortunately, will fall into the trap of bureaucratic process of risk management implementation because of the improper communication between them internally and externally. And what is actually important internally, how you transfer the knowledge of the risk management team to the top management and top down or top or bottom down or vice versa. So as we said, communication seeks promote awareness and understanding. The more you communicate, the more you understand how to identify risk and how to define them. And then consultation involves obtaining feedback and information. You will communicate the process of the risk management, and you will actually put it in action. And then you will share that with the rest in order to get their feedback. How is it, and how actually how effective and efficient the process is. Now, close coordination between the two, communication, consultation, should facilitate factual, timely, relevant, accurate, and understandable exchange of information. Now, again, communication and consultation aims to bring different areas of expertise. The more you share the knowledge of the risk management, the more you get a good feedback from different sectors of your organization. Ensure that effective views are appropriately considered when defining risk criteria and when evaluating risk, that you've taken into account all actually the involved parties and even anyone that could add value to the risk management team. Provide sufficient information to facilitate risk oversight and decision making, and build a sense of inclusiveness and ownership by allocating certain risk to a certain people within the organization to be accountable for. Now, the next pillar, as we said, and I'm going to talk about those three pillars, left, right, and the bottom, and then in the middle, I'll talk about it slightly in more details. Monitoring and review, purpose of it is assure and improve the quality and effectiveness of process design, implementation and outcomes, ongoing monitoring and periodic review of the risk management process and its outcome. The outcome should be planned part of risk management process with responsibility clearly defined. Recording and reporting, the risk management process and its outcomes should be documented always and reported through appropriate mechanisms. Recording and reporting, of course, aims to communicate the risk management activities, to have good records, outcomes across the organization, provide information for decision making, improve risk management activities by the feedback, as we said previously on the previous note, assist interaction with the stakeholders, including those with responsibility and accountability for risk management activities. Now, the process itself, the middle part, which you can see it in white background, scope, context, and criteria. And then you will see risk assessment and risk treatment. And I'm not going over the process of the ISO 31000 in details because this would require much more time. And probably in the future, what we can do to make it much more digestible, we can have a case study on how to actually implement that in terms of the process itself. But in this webinar, we are trying to shed light on the ISO 31000 itself and what are the principles, framework, and the importance of actually using it and how easy to using it. So this is in a nutshell what ISO 31000 means and refer to. And this actually covers the second agenda item. Now, if we move to the next slide, I can see some of the questions before moving to the next slide. One of the question is saying that please elaborate on risk management failure and how to avoid it. I might have touched on that. One of the I have experienced over the last 9 or 10 years of practicing risk management, the reasons behind its failure actually is two things. The first one is the communication, because the risk management team tend to actually keep things within themselves and assuming, in a good intention, of course, and assuming that others will understand what risk management means, which is not the case. You need actually to keep the dialogue continuously internally for all employees within your organization to understand what risk management means, how it actually translates into improving and the performance of the organization. This is one thing, communication. The other things is always we have been looking into the risk management as if it is one off. So we do it, we do the risk register, discuss it internally, tick, and then shelf it. It's not that. That's why the ISO 31000 emphasize on the need to integrate actually the risk management into the organization itself, and how you can avoid the one of the main failure is actually by putting at the beginning the risk management as part of the governance and saying that now, for example, in our organization, what we did when we put together at the very beginning the risk management policy, we actually requested the chairman of the organization to sign this policy, because that will give emphasis on the importance of the risk management. So I hope I captured that. And there's another question saying that what are the differences or the difference between ISO 31000 and IDO 27005, actually both are the risk management. And if you recall, it's actually IEC, not IDO. It's IEC, and I mentioned at the beginning that ISO is always in full collaboration with IEC and on the technical standardization. So 27005 is kind of similar to 31000. Um, and one is saying that, yes, I think the key to avoid RM failure, improving due diligence exercise, set tone at the top of code. Yes, you need to set the tone at the top of the organization to understand it, to be part of its culture. The due diligence exercise is somehow, I don't see the exact relevance with the implementation of the risk management. The due diligence is normally done, ad hoc in terms of the risk management, and only to at the end to benchmark and to see how relative your risk management within the organization compared to the standards and compared to other organizations. Now, since we have a few more minutes, so I can move to item 3 of the agenda, and then I'll keep an eye on the questions from the audience. Now, responding to and mitigating the impacts of COVID-19. Now, generally, history tells us that initial response to disease outbreaks can be characterized by confusion, chaos, and denial, like precisely what we experience in COVID-19. At the beginning, it was chaotic. There's a lot of denial of the presence of the pandemic till now. So this is like, obvious, and this is the human nature. Now, remembering the window of opportunity to respond effectively closes rapidly, and outbreaks quickly becomes a humanitarian crisis. So COVID-19, Ebola, SARS, all of these are good examples. Now, how, though, does risk management behave in time of COVID-19? Meaning how risk management representing by ISO 31000 in this case has responded or should optimally responding to and mitigating the impact of COVID-19. If you recall, I did mention at the beginning that ISO have made relevant standards available free of charge to support the fight against COVID-19. This is very important. This helps organizations to review their procedures against the standards, and I believe has worked very well with risk managers of various industries at being prepared and aim so quickly to respond to this pandemic. Now, by referring to the process of ISO 31000 precisely to the risk management, it helps in listing the potential risk treatment that would mitigate the further spread. I like this graph, the one shown, which is quoted actually by UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, which summarizes the link between the challenges faced due to the global outbreak of COVID-19 and the potential role of quality and standard in mitigating its negative effects. Now, have a look into the chart again. You will notice how important are the standards and the references made to them, representing, I have shown them in a three red circle balloons on the green, orange, and yellow. Orange on the top and green and yellow at the bottom. These emphasize the importance of the standards the fight against COVID-19. So regardless of how the situation develops, action steps have to be taken on help to mitigate the actually impact of COVID-19. Now, I can list a few example of possible mitigants. Let me see if I wrote them here. Yeah. So if we move to the next slide, please. Yeah. So first, you need to review the workforce arrangements. And example, setting up home offices, like again, what we have seen over this year. And then revisit business continuity plans contained in ISO 22301. This is very important. And there's a huge actually link and alignment between the ISO 31000 risk management and ISO 22301. In all my previous speeches in different events and conferences, I always emphasize on the need to integrate between those two ISOs, which eventually has come into effect, and somehow the ISO 65000, the resilience covered both aspects of those. So you need to actually review your business continuity plans between time to time. Then evaluate the supply chain. Get communication, absolutely right. This is very, very, very important. Communication. Keep that word in your mind when as a risk manager or even as part of the organization. But having saying that, don't lose sight of other risk, because you are actually dealing with a risk register list that do not only have COVID-19. Yes, this is on the top currently everywhere, and at every different organization. But remember, within your organization, you do have your also operational and financial and other type of risk. So, having said that, from experience, I found, as I said, that the most crucial mitigation strategy is the integration and implementation of the risk strategy with the ISO 22301, and make it like integrated process, which ultimately fall in within ISO 65, as I said. And again, I hope I'm not confusing you with so many ISO numbering, but in this presentation or speech or webinar, I have continuously referring to those three standards: 31,000, which is risk management; 22.3, 301 or 110, which is business continuity, and the 65,000 resilience. Now moving to the last item of the agenda. Next slide, yeah. What are the lessons learned and how we make sure to keep risk management on the track, especially after this very difficult time. So if we move to the next one. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. The pandemic actually has taught us a lot from every aspect of our life. It also highlights the weakness of many systems, inclusive of course risk management, although we have been talking about, but that doesn't mean it has no shortages or some obstacles even in implementation. So many systems, many procedures. So I can summarize in a simple but direct way what can be done to keep risk management on track based on what we have experienced when implementing the process of risk management, and to ensure it is applicability and not only a procedure, as we said, or standard on paper. So I can cover that in two levels, the individual and organization level. From individual level, I would suggest that for each of us, put people first. Okay, so challenges of, for example, turning a home into an office, we should always consider that, because again, when you put together how to fight against COVID-19, in your risk register, the standalone one for this particular risk, you will put some of the mitigants, right? So one of the mitigants will be like, for example, business continuity plan, the availability of it to deal with certain things from the operational or financial, but from general, and I would actually consider it strategic, look into those items. But people first, identify the main thing, and the main thing, it is actually meaning that what are the must have rather than nice to have, and then identify, of course, the risk, and remember, you need to respond to the risk, and the plans need to be realistic always, and then monitor and communicate. Risk strategies might need adjustment at times to suit because of the reiterative process that you've been actually doing or practicing. That's on the individual level. Now, from an organization level view, we should emphasize on few things. Regular communications are very vital to ensure stakeholders understand the response. An increased emphasis on continuity planning, IT testing, and training, very important, to ultimately have highly skilled people with diverse professional qualifications that bring pragmatic approach to solution. And then access to greater support on continuity planning from sector bodies and others from standards, like, make good benefit out of those accessible standards like the ISOs. Next one. This shows how you keep risk management on track by actually putting those pieces together. And from training, communication, from reporting, from recording, from documentation, all of that, communication, all of that will actually make sure that your risk management is on track. Now, the final slide, risk is managed in every part of the organization structure. Next slide. This is very important, and keep in mind that everyone in an organization has a responsibility for managing risk. It's not only the actually risk managers. And this is one of the shortcomings that over the past few years, we have been treating risk management only for professional. No, everyone in the organization has responsibility in one way or other. So this actually concludes the slides, and I can address some of the questions here. Yes, one of the question is saying that how do we differentiate between mitigation and contingency action? Well, when you sit together or put together the risk register, and you put the likelihood, you put the impacts, and you set the score for it, then you said, okay, what are the treatment or mitigation? Okay, so the mitigation could be either, let's say, procedures that's available, or for example, you need training, or for example, you need to apply certain continuity plans within the organization. These are the mitigants. Now, the contingency, the contingency action is actually an extra mitigants as a backup to the main one. So you have still, for example, a continuity plan for this particular action, but at the same time, you would add extra contingency action by saying that I need to do training, for example. So this is how to kind of differentiate between them. The other question is, how can we consider ISO 31000 being implemented with policies and procedures and HR method? I'm not exactly understanding the question. What I can probably say that having it as part of your governance of the organization, then you put or you develop the policy of the risk management. Policy will contain the resources, the standards that you are going to apply, and then from there you will develop the risk management framework, let's say based on 31000, and using the framework process, and then that should apply for actually any other sector within the organization, or actually can be implemented. It doesn't matter whether it's HR, whether it's a legal, whether it's a financial sector or department. Okay. Okay. One of the question not necessarily writing them. So
maybe ask the participants to ask questions directly.
Yes, you can do so.
Yeah, I think one of the things I should start actually. It has been an enriching and session. I hope everybody would have enjoyed and they can ask questions. Just to begin with, Mr. Alawi, while we were watching this entire scenario and the presentation, so something caught my attention in reference to, since we are talking about the risk management and its effects, impacts, and the coverage. So to my mind, as it goes, maybe you can please correct me and more emphasize on this. Isn't it that risk management to be the basis of applying any other ISO in any organization? Considering in mind, in one of the slides I've seen, you have mentioned value creation and protection. So to have protection and value creation and to avoid operational and financial risks. So RM, that is risk management 31000, should take precedence over every application of any other standard?
Thank you for the question. Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because if you look into other ISOs, there are similarities in terms of the objectives and the aim. Now, the emphasis now on the risk management and as you correctly said, value creation, protection, and all of those absolutely good and needed things. What happened because of the previous, I would say, the shortcomings of the risk management and how we were treating it and consider it only for a certain people within the organization and it's a standard. Now the ISO trying to put more emphasis that it is actually an integrated part of the organization. And if you ask me as a risk manager, for example, or risk professional, I will definitely emphasize that every single organization should absolutely have risk management process, no doubt. Now, it doesn't matter whether the organization is small, big, whether it's sophisticated, whether it has two, three, four employees or thousands of employees. Risk management system should always be, actually, I should use the word must be actually developed within the organization. You will notice the outcome, the positive outcomes of it after you implement it, and after that will turn into the good performance of the company.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, it's a very detailed, deliberation on the question, and that really raises the interest to ask you more and more. But looking at the paucity of time we have, I would not get into too many details now. Maybe we can have another session with you as you rightly said, to have a case study based, maybe a webinar on case study base, so that we can have more and more info about it. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
Sure, yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
so
right. We're running out of time.
yeah,
Hopefully, we will see you and the audience in the next webinar, where
yeah,
probably a case study will be good to have, at least to move from, procedure and the process into an actual, uh,
implementation.
yeah.
Okay, so anybody wants to ask any question? I think I can request Gaurav. You are there, I think. Anirudh, Gaurav,
Hello.
Karthik,
Yeah, hi.
Jasim.
Yes,
Any?
please. I'm just from Oman Sur. Um, I think I had one question that I think our professional man, Mr. Hassan, has already answered some of it because my question was what kind of project structure that would be appropriate for ISO 351,000 risk management? Should it be a formal and complex, or can it be less formal and relatively simple? And that's the first one. The second one, the second question what I've got. Uh, when we are dealing with the exam, or when we are dealing with attendance of ISO, uh, any ISO courses, the the problem here is every time what the institute they just collect the people and they do for them sort of theory exam. And I would like to know if there is any chance from now and so on that will be changed, and the exam or the attendance will be in live companies, like going to a practical more than theory. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer the first one, and the second one, probably might be addressed to the organization of ISO, or even Alvin can interact into that. Well, the risk management can be actually simple. It doesn't have to be complicated and sophisticated. Now, yes, previously, in a few years back, we actually many people were looking into risk management as a very complicated, and you need to have absolutely only professionals to run it. yes, the development of it, you need a professional, but to continue running of it, you need every single member of the organization. Because again, of the need to communicate, because they need to get feedback from everyone. Now, for example, when you set together your risk items or you set risk register, you need to sit with everyone, because each section or each actually department within your organization, you need to hear them to see what risk they foresee within their department, and then you will list that. You will try to put mitigants. So you need to keep the communication with internally, in a positive way. So that actually means you need to involve everyone. But again, it depends on, for example, who will be doing the actual work. But to simplify it, yes, it can be easy. It's not complicated. ISO 31000 makes it even more easier to implement. ISO 31000 doesn't, for example, require the company to be accredited for ISO 31000. As far as it is implemented, then that's fine.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you.
Any other question, please? Because then we'll.
Yeah, may I?
Gaurav, you wants to add something?
Yeah, it's an excellent session. First of all, I appreciate Mr. Alvin for taking time and sharing his experience with us. One just question, not a question, actually, just observation is that we often see that top management sometimes override the internal controls, and that leads to this management failure, or rather we can say it's a management failure or governance failure. So what's your thoughts on that? Though it may be a well-documented risk management policy and framework within the organization, risk managers are there, everything is good. So your take on that, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it is actually quite a good question as well, and we have experienced that in many organizations. The best is actually first reporting. The risk manager within the organization should directly be reported to the CEO. This is number one. Okay, so he wouldn't. I have seen it to be reported to, for example, CFO, or report to, I would say mid-level management. No, it has actually to be reported to the top CEO, and this is number one. And number two, you need to consider the risk management, as we say, to be part of your governance. So if it is within the governance of the organization, then the interference from the managers or management wouldn't be seen, because you will always go back saying that the governance or the Bible of our organization is saying so. So you will eliminate, or you, if not eliminate, you will minimize the interference from other actually management. And the third thing, which is important, is keep always explaining the risk management and what you want to do, or what are the risk, what are the mitigant plans. Keep those this dialogue with the management, and meaning that, because sometimes they will overrule or interfere because of lack of understanding of certain things. If you emphasize on how you come up with this sequential, then you will actually convey the right message to them.
Thank you, Mr. Alvin. This is really very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we've sum up this now, and thank you everyone for being patient, and thank you, Mr. Alawi, sharing your knowledge, and
thank you very much. Thank you.
mesmerizing to.
Thank you, Alvin Integrated.
So, and it's really nice to have all of you. I can see a couple of people joining again in the regular webinars. And today's session was basically a very insightful one. Things which we were not even aware of are being learned now. May I finally request Mr. Alawi to say maybe a line or two as a piece of advice with his long experience in different domains, in risk management, crisis management, project management, BCM and everything. Just in 2 lines, if you want to give it, sum up this thing.
Thank you. I will reiterate what I said, that risk management is actually very important, and every member of organization has to be a risk manager and has to look into various aspects that he see that risk are actually forming part of his life.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alawi. Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants. Great session, great participation. Thank you, Alvin. It's been a pleasure here. And thank you so much. We'll keep on sharing, posting. And once again, Mr. Alawi, thank you so much. We would love to hear you once again in one of our forthcoming sessions.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for you.
Yeah, please
One
stay
more
safe.
thing, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We would like to thank our professional guy here, Mr. Hassan Alawi, and would like even that presentation of him to be sent to us, to all of us, so it will be sort of as a small reference can be for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll take care of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Was excellent, very interactive session.
Yeah.
Thank you. All the very best.
It's all because of you people. You join and we are able to do it. So tons of thanks.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye. Take care. Stay well.